My friends, before I move on from the gospel reading from this past Sunday, I have to set a few things straight about what is and is not being talked about by the passage. Somebody asked Jesus in Luke chapter 13, verse 23, "Lord, will only a few people be saved?" What is he talking about? When people read this gospel passage, American Christians and other Western people, when they read the gospel passage of Luke chapter 13, verses 22 to 30, they wrongly imagine that Jesus is being asked about the eternal salvation of people from every time and place. So they take salvation or being saved to mean salvation from hell or being saved into heaven. And people, they take to mean a body of human beings from every time and place that includes Gentiles. Sorry, this passage has nothing to do with salvation from hell, an afterlife in heaven, and it has nothing to do with Gentiles, non-Israelites. In context, people means first century Israelite people, exclusively. People here means biblical first century Israelite people. That's it, nobody else. People in this passage, therefore, does not mean all peoples everywhere of all times. Please stop reading that into the text. When you do that, you're doing violence to the Gospels. Stop it. And saved, or salvation, in the context of this passage has nothing to do about afterlife, whether we're talking a personal afterlife or a collective afterlife. It's not talking about that, folks. What it's talking about is who among the Israelites will be rescued from the wrath of God coming to establish the Israelite theocracy in the land of Israel, the first century. You know, all theology is culturally specific analogy. That's true for the inspired theologies or God talk we find in the Gospels. These are ancient Middle Eastern, first century Mediterranean people. When you read in the Gospels, Abba, Father, don't think Santa Claus. Don't think a daddy. That's not what's being imagined. What's being imagined is like the Godfather. And when you piss off the Godfather, when you shame his family, dishonor his family, he has to defend his honor by whacking you, by calling out a hit on you. And that's what God does in the Bible. Sure, he's forgiving once he gets even. By the way, is that how we view God these days? Can we imagine God to be like that in our culture? Should we imagine God to be like that in our culture? Perhaps it would be more honest to see God in new, different ways. But I digress. See, the writings of antiquity, like the Gospels, were what anthropologists call high context documents. High context means that the authors and their readers, their audience, share a high level of common knowledge about the social context. What that means is that the authors have to provide very little auxiliary background information, background explanation of things, because the audience already gets it. By contrast, in our very complex United States Western cultures, where there are so many subcultures and unique contexts and highly specialized nomenclatures, Western authors writing in this low context culture typically have to explain the background of everything they write. In a high context document such as the gospel called Luke, the question, will only a few people be saved, should be unpacked to mean, will God, that is the God of Israel, save only a few people in Israel, or a few Israelites? That would be the assumed context. And again, salvation isn't talking about any afterlife in heaven. Instead, salvation here means participation in a forthcoming Israelite theocracy. Folks, you cannot know what the Bible means until you realize what the Bible meant.